So let's go back to, just to look at the etymology, okay, of meditation. What does it mean to meditate? Obviously, the word meditate has been around for a long time, and um, the definition of meditation or meditate is to ponder, to think abstractly, to engage in mental contemplation. We understand that it's the contemplation, it's the concentration, it's the introspection, um, and I think that that all sounds great to a lot of people, but to those who haven't quite been able to like get themselves into a state that shifts who they are and who they and how they see themselves. And once we do it once, you never want to go back. So the root word, um, med, is to take appropriate measure, to plan in the mind, to employ the mind in thought or contemplation. And I find it to be, just this really, really interesting that, um, you know, if we look at that and kind of, med is to think, right? There is the Latin, meditare is to think or reflect or consider. Um, when we look at meditare in a different way, and the spelling is actually a little bit different. It's to heal, to give medical attention, to cure. So I love that because I think, just based on my experience, that meditation is the ability to shift, to cure our mind of the trappings that we have become programmed to believe. It's the release, it's the cure of through thoughtless thought, right? I mean, I'm kind of just playing a little bit more poetically right now, but just from my own experiences, that meditation so much is the ability to tune out in order to heal within. What, just based on what I just said, Chris, like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's funny. Something as simple as med from medicine and meditation. I actually never put those two together until right now. And well, that makes so much sense, right? And it's almost like meditation is medicine for the brain or the mind, because our minds are beautiful, wonderful machines, and in this current day and age, they are running on complete overdrive, right? And we a lot of the time are taught that it's all the mind and you got to think your way through everything and ponder your way through life. And of course, we know that there's so much more for our guidance systems, like our heart and intuition as an example of other ways that we can quote unquote think. So we use our mind far too much now. It's just it's on overload. It's on absolute overdrive. And when we meditate, it just helps bring that engine that's like revving at way too high of an RPM. It's like it brings it down to that like smooth purring like a kitten kind of engine sound maybe, and just allows your mind to settle a bit more, because when our minds are just bouncing around constantly, and I'm very guilty of this. This is why I meditate and do everything else that I do, because my mind is just go go go, and it just helps like bring that silence. And when your mind can actually have some silence and not think, then oh my god, not only is it just so peaceful and so restorative, but then that's where the ideas come in, that's where your creativity can come in, and that's where it's oddly more productive. If you're going to look at like, oh, I have such a busy day, how am I going to squeeze in time for meditation? Well, you can reframe meditation to look at that is enhancing your productivity. When you take that 5, 10, 15, 20 minute break, maybe multiple times in your day, or just once, either way, that will help bring that silence and that space into your mind to then allow new thoughts and new creative things to come in. So yeah, I mean, let's dive into it. But I love the etymology of that. I never realized that it really is medicine in a sense, right?
It is medicine, absolutely. Um, we're going to talk about another breathing technique that should be really helpful. Last week, we dove a bit into the works of Paramahansa Yogananda and Self-Realization Fellowship, and everything that he did when he came to the Western world was to really teach Kriya Yoga. And Kriya Yoga is a breathing technique or a technology, or a way in which um, to bring the antenna of ourself in connection with God. And so just as a regular way to get into a meditative state, we're going to go through of the posture, where to rest your eyes when you meditate, what your breathing should be like, and where you should be sitting, that kind of thing. So we'll go into the weeds a little bit with that. But you brought up something very interesting, and I took some notes here. That and I would This is where I kind of geek out, and I want to dive into the aspects of how do we prime the mind and actually prime the body to get ourselves into a meditation or a state of meditation, so that we not only feel a sense of calm, and we've said this a lot on this channel, is that meditation, the very first stage of meditation, is to be in a greater sense of calm. It is both that physical sense, it's the mental sense, but it's also the physiological. How do we get back into a stasis? But different phases or stages, the more advanced stages, I guess, of meditation is really what I'm interested in, because I want to know, how do we get to a gamma state, right? And we're going to talk about that in just a second, about what that really means. But I'm interested in finding out, how do we prime the body first? And for me to understand how to prime the body and the mind, I need to understand the intricacies of what happens with our body, what happens with our brain, what are the chemicals that come through, and what are the different states, resting states that our body actually goes through. So I'm going to just like dive right in here and talk about this. So um, most people ask me, like, when is the best time to meditate? And I'm going to say, undoubtedly, the best time to meditate is in the morning before you do anything. But it also is really great to do at night, in the evening. The brain goes from a deep delta brainwave to theta to alpha to beta, from our night to our morning. Is that correct, Chris? Like, beta is our awakened state.
Yeah. Beta alpha is just getting out of sleepiness into alertness, which is a great meditative state,
Okay.
but beta is more awake.
Okay. So I'm always asking the question of why. What is that all about? What are these different states of brain waves that we experience? And when we go to bed, we go from beta to alpha to theta to delta, and it's reversed when we wake up. The morning turns on this kind of high beta, and it's almost like driving a sports car in first gear. The first thing that happens when we open our eyes is we see light, and our light then activates our optic nerve, which sends signals to the pineal gland. And the pineal gland then starts to make serotonin. Serotonin is the daytime neurotransmitter. It gets us up and going during the day, right? I mean, that's like how we feel, like, okay, I'm energized, I'm ready to get up. And that's what happens when we open our eyes. But the nighttime is the almost the opposite. It changes because we have less light to the optic nerve, and then it sends different signals to the pineal gland, and it takes serotonin, and it actually takes the pieces, like some pieces within the serotonin, and it turns it almost alchemically into melatonin. Now, there's scientific ways in which that happen, and we're not going to go into that, but this is where, when we get tired, right? This is where melatonin actually kicks in, which is, again, that's our nighttime neurotransmitter. So serotonin gets you up, and melatonin helps you go to sleep. When serotonin increases the brain waves, it goes into beta, which is our awakened state, and it helps us pay attention to our outer world. So, where does meditation come in with all of this? Well, meditation happens when we shut our eyes and get into a relaxed state, and we desensitize our serotonin, where we are forgetting our outer world and going into an inner world. Meditation brainwaves move into melatonin. But if you're waking in the morning, okay, I mean, like if you're waking in the morning and say it's like 5 o'clock in the morning, the brain waves will be in theta or alpha, which is your subconscious, which is one of the reasons why getting into a meditative state in the morning is really great, because you have to do actually less work. Early in the morning is the best time to create, because the rest of the day, what are we doing? We are like on high beta waves. Like we're thinking, we're not thinking, we're doing. And between a beta and an alpha, there is the possibility to slip into a theta brainwave, which is the key to a deeper state of meditation. And it's when the body is asleep, but the mind is awake. And this is where creative genius comes in. When the body no longer feels it's the mind, it no longer resists. And when that happens, things change instantaneously. And when we talk about, you know, instantaneous manifestations, that's what we're talking about here. Now, some people say you shouldn't go to sleep, you shouldn't meditate in bed, because you're more likely in the morning, if you're laying down, to actually go back into a delta phase. And when you slip back into that delta, you're missing the whole thing that happens with the brainstem, which we'll get into in just a second. But when you're in alpha and you shift into theta and the body gets relaxed, the sympathetic nervous system actually switches on. And then it's able to balance the parasympathetic nervous system. And what happens when you're in that thetic state and your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system kind of go into harmony? It explodes and hits the brain cells, which switch the filament gate. Filament gate. And all energy hits that area, which is the brain stem back here. And again, what's in the brainstem area? It's your vagus nerve. And what happens there is that your gamma brain waves, which are your super conscious brain waves, start to get activated. And I have had this happen before. And it's a moment that you can't forget, because it's a little different than just being in a meditative state. When you are in a gamma state, you literally are living the experiences that in your inner world that are so profound in the moment that you think it's real. So high gamma changes everything. And that is the energy and the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems being basically in harmony. And the filament gate is then open, and the subconscious is out of the way. It's in the back seat. It's in the back seat with the seatbelt on while you, as soul, are driving the vehicle. And you then become a person that is so aware of the thinking brain, and you're able to shut it off. in a different way than the monkey mind brain that is on incessant, thoughts and feelings and feelings and thoughts and thoughts and feelings. It's almost as if you can use it, it's like a dimmer switch that you then have the control to dim it down to say 10 to 1,000, right? How bright do you want it to be?